They say big boys don't cry. But as we saw this week with the sharing of honest emotion between Prince Harry and Rio Ferdinand, real men do.
Everything can be okay, but I really regret not ever talking about it.
Yeah,
you know, for the first 28 years of my life, never talked about it.
I, like the millions around the world who saw this clip, couldn't help but feel touched. These two high-profile alpha men were brought together by loss. In Harry's case, his mother, and in Rio's case, his wife and mother of his 3 young children, who died last year from breast cancer. We felt the same when we saw Brendan Cox so bravely speak about Joe Cox's senseless murder. Like these men, I know what it feels like to lose a loved one in a very public way, and what it feels like to have to function every day whilst harbouring a deep emotional wound. However, I'm a woman. I'm allowed to cry. I'm allowed to crumble. The women's movement has been about empowering women so their voices can be heard. We now need a men's movement that empowers men so that they don't think that a stiff upper lip is their only option, no matter how bad things get. Greg?
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, when you look at your own... I mean, I'm one of these guys who cries in the cinema and cries at weddings and all those sorts of things.
I wouldn't have thought that
But that
about
doesn't
you.
make... But when I look back at the difficult times of my life, the crises in my life, I don't think I shared it with anybody. And I think whether that's a male trait that is something biological, or whether it's just that we were all brought up and you men had to be like this, but surely you're right. That, I mean, all the people you know who've gone into therapy at times like that, I found it incredibly beneficial.
Completely.
Incredibly beneficial. But I'm sorry.
No, please.
Yeah, but saying it doesn't change it, does it? Seeing Prince Harry saying it will help, because a lot of people will watch that and say, yeah, I'm going through that experience and I need some help. The trouble is, where do you get the help from? Is it your friends, is it your family, or is it someone outside?
Yes, exactly.
Well, Greg, having watched a lot of your work with the England football team, I've cried a lot. So I have to say, you brought me to... Can I go around the ladies of the panel, if you wouldn't mind?
Yeah.
If the man in your life, whether it's your husband, boyfriend, partner, whatever, how much crying is too much crying? How much could he blub before it would start to become an issue? Emma? Or would it not matter?
I mean, if he was going through something horrendous, like the loss of his mother...
Like a storyline on EastEnders or Coronation
Street.
No, but hang on,
we're talking about different things. If we're talking about a serious
Greg
issue...
talked about a movie.
I mean, I think I've only seen my husband cry a handful of times.
Right.
But he, you know, touch plywood, I'm sure it's very expensive, has yet to have one of those life-altering moments.
Right.
And I don't know how he'll respond to those moments. You know, it's just not happened yet.
I think, you know, as you know, someone who has experienced, you know, horrendous loss, I think we need to get to a point where we allow men to be vulnerable and to show weakness.
I think to show their vulnerability is what you mean.
Yes, to show their vulnerability.
Because I'm sure you men are vulnerable, don't worry about that.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And to show weakness, and for society to be comfortable and okay with that.
But at what point would there be too much crying? You know, if the quiche
didn't rise
or whatever and he starts sobbing.
We're not talking about a sad movie or whatever. We're talking about real issues. You know, in the case of Prince Harry, he lost his mother in such a tragic way and didn't talk about it with anybody until he was 28 years old. So think about what that man has been holding for that.
Well, do you think he didn't talk with anybody trained? Should we say that? I'm sure he spoke to...
No, he said he didn't speak about it.
Well, he never spoke to his brother.
He said he didn't speak about it.
Well,
that's what he said.
Yeah. But I'm not sure that I see your point, June, because for me, everybody is different. So I'm always, like, a bit wary of splitting things into male and female and generalising on those bases, because to me, if you're someone that wants to express emotion and go and seek help, then you will, whether you're a man or a woman.
Not true, Michelle.
And I have, for example, if I think of my sister, I've got a sister, she's a girl. I've never seen her, I've probably seen her cry once in my life, and she's a girl. But then I've got male friends that are obviously guys. I've seen them cry loads of times. I know guys that have had therapy. I know girls that have had therapy. So I don't see this kind of...
I think it's annoying to do generalisations. Obviously, they're not perfect. But I'm sorry, you're not right at all for me on this. And the statistics don't bear it out.
Not when you look at the data.
And it's fine to do a sort of, this is what my friends are doing, but We know that suicide is the biggest killer of men under, I think it's under the age of 45.
And I've been impacted by it.
I mean, maybe you want to talk about that, but what I was going to say, just very briefly, if you let me, is that if they don't speak about these issues, it stays inside them. And it's statistically there, what June's saying.
And then we find out when it gets to the point of no return. So we have, and I think the difference is, when you look at the women's movement, we have known for centuries that women haven't been empowered to stand up for themselves in the workplace and so on and so on. And now that's beginning to happen. That is becoming something that we celebrate. We need the reverse for men, that actually, in terms of empowering women in the workplace, we need to empower men emotionally, because there is something very serious going on.
How do you know it's for real? Because if we come back to one of Greg's area of expertise, football, I think we've got some shots now of Ronaldo, who's a very well-known Portuguese football player, who is sobbing. I mean, fortunately, the guy's all right. You know, it isn't like he had to have... But this is because he's got to come off, and I think it was the final as a key game, and this is where he's receiving an award. Sorry, that for me is just absurd.
No, it's not absurd.
What, weeping when you get an award,
No,
Greg?
it's just emotion.
Then we've got an award for Greg.
You shouldn't confuse emotion between that and crisis in your life.
And crisis in your life.
I mean, he was crying. He was crying to come off because he got to the final of the Euros.
Greg, he's just been made footballer of the year.
But he found it too difficult.
Your point is ridiculous, because if you take what Greg said he'll go to a movie and comfortably cry, but at the most horrendous, tragic moments in his life, that's a time where he didn't cry. That's the problem we have here.
But isn't that a personal choice, though, as opposed to feeling like you're not?
You've got to look at the statistics.
Isn't there a difference in friendships between men and women? I mean,
completely.
the way that women, the friendships they have and how intimate and close they are. Blokes talk about football and all sorts of things. I mean, I've got really close friends for all of my life, but I would never talk to them about how I felt when my dad died.
I'm trying to... Thank you. Greg, a rugby player converts, you get his arm torn off. He's never going to cry. You tell me a time you've ever seen a rugby player cry, and they can have their arms ripped out.
But that's about pain. That's about pain.
With Ronaldo.
No, but different cultures,
We're talking about emotions.
We're talking about your real life.
Anyway, we've got a great clip of President Obama when he was talking about the Sandy Hook murders.
From every family who never imagined that their loved one would be taken from our lives by a bullet from a gun. Every time I think about those kids, it gets me mad.
You see, you look at Nick's reaction to that.
Well, he's the man who can do something about it.
Nick's reaction is he thinks that's acting.
Well, he's the man who can do something about it.
That's what you think it is. You think it's acting, don't you?
50-50. Of course he's moved. Of course he's moved. He's the man who can bloody well do something about it.
No, you're coming back
sorry,
to...
last time I looked, he was president.
Yeah, but you've come back to the discussions we've had before, which basically says politicians can solve everything. And we all know that.
No, they can't. They can't.
So
but
when you got divorced, did you cry?
Oh, golly. I think I'd probably cry for the sake of the children, yes.
But what about for yourself?
No, the marriage had come to the end of the road. So, yeah, it was probably healthier for all parties to move on. But no, you cry for the impact on the kids.
Even if it's healthy for all parties, you still grieve the loss of that relationship.
Don't you think that the watershed in the UK was the death of Diana, which you've touched on briefly, because that brought about a form of conspicuous mourning, in that you had to be seen to sob.
But not for the people involved.
Oh, look at that video footage
is the point
where the funeral...
This is the point of what Harry was saying. You know, remember what we were talking about just before we started with the church?
The picture, that picture on the morning after Diana died, when you saw the family going to church and those two boys who'd lost their mother a few hours before, you wouldn't have known it.
No, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. If they're dealing with it their own... I mean, would you rather having them...
No, I agree with that. It isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Why?
Because it's real.
But that's the conspicuous mourning that we all now expect. That's because you didn't sob enough.
Right, I think it's time...
Sob off is what you're saying to me.
I'm not telling you to sob off. But I don't think you will, not publicly anyway.
I'll make him cry.